Welcome to the Beyond the Bestseller podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Schugnecht, and my guest today is Cassandra Crawley Mayo, and she is the author of Is Your Way in Your Way? Cassandra, welcome to the show, and would you please start us out by introducing yourself?
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Well, as you indicated, my name is Cassandra Crawley Mayo, and Cassandra is actually on a mission. And I've been on a mission for a while, and I've always believed that, especially when I got graduated from college, like I used to have this thing like, why am I here? I mean, okay, you go to college, then you're supposed to get married, buy a house, a white picket fence, have children. I'm like, I think that's really the deal for me. And so now I'm actually on a mission to empower a generation of women to mitigate those self-imposed barriers that's preventing them from living their best life. And I say that because I've known too many people that have transitioned, unfortunately, already, and there were things that they wanted to do and they didn't do it. And I figured out they didn't do it because they were in their own way. So that's and also I was born like the end of the civil rights movement. And by being that in that particular stance, I was all always the first African American female in anything that I did, any job. So
Mm,
that kind of sets up who I am, why I do what I do, what am I advocacy for. And so that's kind of me, and my book is something I've always wanted to do. And it took me years to do it because I was in my way.
yeah, yeah. Well, so I that's so inspiring. I can say being in the business world, I have often been the only woman in the room or in leadership, particularly there's a lot, there's where I have been fewer women. But
Mhm.
also what you said about being the only African American woman, the first African American woman in the kind of paving the way as you were
Yes.
doing, it must be very isolating, or must have been very isolating for you as you were going through that. I can't even imagine. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
And Kelly, and if I could say this about that situation, I was very naive. I wasn't quite sure what was really going on. Whatever I do or whatever job I was offered, I just did me. And then eventually I realized I paved the way for others. And I believe
Mhm.
if I would have known that I was what someone called me, it was a token, if I would have understood that entire dynamic, I'm not sure what I would be where I am today. So the not
Right.
me being naive, I think in that era was pretty good because I got to be,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's a very inspiring story, Cassandra.
Thank you.
So tell me about what led you to write your book. I mean, you kind of gave the background there, but what made you want to tell that story of being the person in your own way, and how does that I'm curious about kind of like how that speaks to other people and helping them get out of their own way.
What inspired the story was I always wanted to write a book. When I was a little girl, I used to do short stories all the time, and my mom would read them, and she'd chuckle, laugh a little bit, and it's like, oh, that's so good, you're so creative. I'm like, yeah, yeah. So then when I was like, okay, so I did a vision board, and on my vision board, I had a book. I was the author of this book. And then I realized that why am I not doing the book? This is something that I
Mm,
want to do. What's taking me so long? What's holding me back? And I realized that I was in my way. And what I mean by being in my way, I had doubts. Like, I've never done a book before, and I'm not sure what to even do. I don't even know where to start. I don't want people to know my story, because it's nonfiction. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't think I'm really worthy of this. And I just want to keep my family a secret. And, all these self-imposed barriers that I put on myself. And also during my career, I was always a mentor. And, I
Mm.
could help everybody else attain their dreams, their aspirations, what it is that they wanted to do. But I realized that I couldn't do it for myself. And that's when I said, you know what? I am in my way. And I know for a fact, if I were to get out of my way, no telling what I could do. So I prayed and said, God, please help me get out of my way. What is it that you would have for me to do? What is my purpose? What is it that can provide me with more meaning in my life? How can I be an impact? So that's kind of how it started. And I actually wrote the book during COVID.
Okay. So that gave you some time to sit
Yes,
and focus on the writing, I'm sure.
exactly.
Um, so what is your number one tip for people to get out of their own way? I mean, so you identified it. Maybe that's the first step, right? Is like
Hmm.
recognizing that you are in your own way.
Hmm.
But how do you tell people um to like what to do to get out of their own way and start accomplishing those goals that they have?
Yeah, yeah. Well, initially, I used to, people are so into purpose, and that's fine. Lately I'm hearing, why am I here? What is it that I'm supposed to do? And so I would, question and say, what is it? I would ask this question from a scale from 0 to 10, where are you in living your best life on your terms? 10 being the highest. And when I would ask people that, they would look at me like, I don't know, or either, oh, I'm a 10, but yet I knew it was a thought-provoking question because they answered too quickly. And
Hmm.
so then they start thinking about, hmm, well, you know what? I always wanted to have my own business. I'm like, well, why haven't you? Well, I don't have the money, or I'm not quite sure what it is that I want to do. And then I would tell people this story. And this is a story from a hospice nurse by the name of Bonnie Ware. And Bonnie Ware started interviewing individuals that were transitioning to find out what regrets did they have in life. And there were
Okay.
5 regrets. And there were two that resonated with me. The three was like, I wish I didn't work so hard. I wish I'd have spent more time with family and friends. But the ones that got to me were the ones that said, you know what? I regret not being myself or true to myself.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And then another one was, I wish I were happier. And those two struck with me. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Well, can I be happier? Well, what do I need to do to be more true to myself? So that really started the snowball effect. And then when people kind of share with me, well, I want to do this. Like I give you an example. I had an employee that says, I would like to get out on my own and start a marketing company. And I'm like, okay, well, what's stopping you? Well, the job that I have now is I get a salary and I'm comfortable with that, so I'm like, hmm, okay, I understand.
I'm
But
laughing
what
because I'm
it,
like, was this me you were talking to a few months ago?
yeah,
It wasn't me, just for the listeners to know, but this has been my
yeah.
journey. So I'm curious where this goes.
Yeah, so we would take a deep dive into it and say, well, let's talk about it. And I always say, whatever you want to do, you can't do it alone. So find out who is in your circle, or when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. If you made that decision, like, you know what? I think I do want to start my company. So let's talk through it. So we talk about things like, what do you need to do to start a company? What specifically do you want to do in the company? So talk them through what it is, and then kind of talk about ways, well, in regards to salary or money. Can you do two things at one time? Well, yeah. Okay, all right. So this is what we'll do. And then you prioritize what you do on your job that you don't really want to keep because that's not fulfilling you. And then we'll do something, then we'll talk about your business. Let's do a business plan. So I always say, if you really want to, figure out what's your priority. Now you can't, as women, we think we can do it all. We can, but not at the same time. So whatever's going on in your life, figure out what's the priority. If you have young kids, perhaps that's the priority right there. You
Yeah.
sacrifice. So, you did. So, in other words, I said, well, first of all, you're making up excuses. So you're avoiding it. because that's not really, this is what you're saying. That's just an idea in your head, but you're not, putting it to practice. So a lot of times we find out, or another example, somebody says, well, I'm not smart enough. I'm not smart. I'm like, well, who told you that? Well, when I was growing up, my mom used to say, you're not good at that. And I'm like, okay, so at least they become aware. I call it the ABCs. Be aware of what it is that's stopping you. And then from the B, you're like, well, where did that belief come from? And kind
Mm-hmm.
of think about that. And then the
Mm-hmm.
C was, let's change the narrative. So I take them through exercises, and voila, and we start moving forward, taking some type of action. That's the only way that you're going to progress, I would say.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not about perfection, it's progression.
You are like speaking to my soul because so you and I did not have a conversation about any of this before recording. But I was in a marketing job.
Mm,
I had been dreaming for the last 2.5 years of leaving. Not I wasn't dreaming about leaving, but I was dreaming about starting, what was next, right? Like I was dreaming
right.
about the business I wanted to create, but I never would have left my job because I had, the stability of the job, right? I had great pay, I had great benefits, all the things. And so I was doing it like, I was just dreaming on the side of like, well, here's how it would look. I even built my website. I did all these things
Oh,
that I was like, clearly I was thinking really hard about it, but I was in
yeah.
my own way because
Uh-huh.
I could not take that step
Mhm,
to I just couldn't take the leap, right?
mhm.
Till I was laid off in October.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and that's when I said, okay. And
Okay.
I started. I actually, the first thing I did the morning after I got laid off was I started applying for jobs. And I said to my husband, I'm going to do this and I'm going to work on my business, but I'm going to apply for jobs so I have both options, right? And by Monday morning, I can't remember if I said the timeline, like, so, the Friday I was applying for jobs. By Monday morning, I said, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to go work for somebody else. I'm going to start my own agency. And
Wow.
I just dove in head first. And then the journey that I've been on these last couple of months since then is exactly what you were just saying, where like there's been so many things that I've been like, people told me I wasn't like this. People told me
Mhm.
I didn't do this well or didn't whatever. And over time, I mean, it feels like it's been 10 years and it's been 2 months,
Yeah.
but over that short period of time, I started like really reflecting on what I enjoy, what I'm good at, what I really want to do. And I had to start filtering out all of that stuff and start,
Uh-huh.
moving in the direction of what I knew in my heart was right for me, even if other
Mm.
people had planted seeds in my head that it wasn't, you know?
Exactly.
So anyway, so yes, you were like, like, I feel like you were just speaking directly to me.
Oh my gosh.
Anyways,
Congratulations.
yeah, well, thank you. But
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds like your book really is going to be inspiring to somebody like me, to other women who maybe are in their own way as far as writing a book, starting a business,
That's
whatever
right.
that thing is that they want to pursue. And that's the whole purpose of this podcast, is helping
Yeah.
women, inspire women to do those things, to go after those dreams that they have. You mentioned that we as women think we can do everything, and I think that's true when it comes to doing things, right? But I also think
Yeah.
women hold ourselves back because we're like, oh, I'm not that person. I'm not good enough to do whatever. Like, I think, that we often hold
Yeah.
ourselves back because we think that,
Mhm.
um, like, one of the things I always say is I was the person behind the person in my whole career. I've been the person behind the person. It's
Mm.
always been a man who took the leap of faith and started a business, right? And I was the
That's
person
right.
helping support them in
That's
their
right.
business.
That's right.
And so then I decided that I was going to force myself to be the person, right? And to,
Right. Exactly.
put my own agenda first and build
Hmm.
that business the way that I envision it. So
And that's
anyways,
courage. I applaud you. It takes
thank
courage
you.
to do
Thank you.
that.
Yeah.
And if we think about it, a lot of the barriers are self-imposed.
Yes. Yes. They
Yeah.
are, but you feel like
Mhm.
it's coming, from other
Yeah.
places, right? Other people, other things. But really, when I was like kind of forced off the ledge, it all of that stuff just like opened up. And that's why it feels like so much progress in such a short amount of time. Was I
Yeah.
really had to work through a lot of that and realize that the things I had been telling myself were internal, and I needed to work through it and make decisions quickly and start moving forward
Yeah.
to build the business I want, instead of, again, like I had originally, my backup plan was I'm going to go find another job, find another person to be behind, right? And
That's right. That's
um
right.
and yeah, so I chose a different path. Um
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I love the idea of your book for sure. I
Uh-huh.
definitely want to dive into that. So tell me about, you mentioned that you wrote it during COVID. So how did you approach that process of like, I have this idea, I want to help people, I want to inspire people. How did you start that process of getting that book, those words on paper?
Remember earlier when I said when the student's ready, the teacher will appear? There was something inside me that said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write this book. And then I received a phone call from a friend who had said to me that she had excuse me, that's Max, my dog. Oh my gosh, Max. Anyway, said that she knew of a colleague of hers who had just written a book. And I was like, oh, really? I said, how did she do it? I got all excited, like, well, tell me about that. She said she actually used a ghostwriter. And I'm like, a ghostwriter? I said, can anybody tell my story like me? I don't know if I'm,
Sure.
I don't even, because this is all new for me. So I'm like, a ghostwriter? What is that? But anyway, she got the information for me and I called her. And then from that point in time, we talked through what I wanted to do. She liked my idea. And she did say that I can't write it as a ghostwriter because it's really your story. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to write an outline. We're going to outline. I'm like, oh, this sounds right, and an outline. And another thing, I am a Christian, and she was too. And what I was talking about and what I wanted to do, it was like-minded. She got it. And that even made me feel better about it. And she understood what I was trying to get across because my book is chapters of love letters written to women. Like, dear women, um, uh, with esteem issues, or dear women who wear a figurative mask, or dear women trying to figure out what their purpose is. So we were able to do that. And she really helped with the outline and said, okay, now at the end of each chapter, why don't we talk about the solutions to these concerns and circumstances? And I'm like, okay. So that's actually how it started. And boy, it was tough. There were times that I wanted to just stop because after the book was written, I didn't know what to do. Okay, now what?
Yeah.
Now what
Yeah.
do I do with this? And she's not a publisher or anything like that. She just helped with the process and
Yeah.
admitted that this was her most difficult project because she's a ghostwriter. You tell me
Yeah.
what you want to say and I'll do it. But it turned out really, really well. And I was just blessed to be a number one best-selling book in addition to a best-selling author. So I was just super excited. And it felt good, like for yourself. You know when you're doing something you should be doing because you feel good about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's amazing. That's great that you found somebody to help you with that. So the writing process can be really challenging. It can be, when you have a ghostwriter, it still is challenging in a different way. I mean, it's still a lot of,
Mm,
it's your thoughts coming out. It's your, it's your vision that's coming out in
hmm.
that book, and the writer is
Yeah.
helping to bring that to fruition. But it's still a lot of work for you to do
Uh-huh.
all
It
of that.
was. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
It was.
um so you didn't know what was next, but you became a bestseller. So how
Yeah.
so how did that happen without you knowing what was next?
Well, I knew I needed someone to publish it because she didn't publish. So I just did my research. And because I'm a Christian, I'm like, oh, so I found this publishing company that it's not a traditional publishing company. I found out what you had to do if you wanted a tradition. I'm like, that's too much work. I'm not, no. And so I found a publishing company by the name of Zulon, which was a Christian publishing company.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
from there, there were other Christian publishing companies, but what I did was I did a comparison analysis to try to find out what is it that you do, and of course the elephant in the room, how much will it be? Who's gonna, what sites are you gonna give it to? Because all of this was just so new, and because it was
Yeah.
COVID, they were challenged. I think they were short staffed. It was just a lot. It took over a year for this whole thing to come to fruition.
Yeah.
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 And then you
It
got
could
the
take some
marketing.
time
You
for
have to
sure.
let people know you have it. And oh my gosh, it was tedious.
Yeah. Did
Yeah.
Zulon help you with the marketing? Like did when it published, they do the publishing part of it. Did you also use any of their services for marketing?
I used me, and that was tough because I was not a big, what I say, social media person. And I knew that I had to do that. So I actually, in the beginning, which I think a lot of people make mistakes, but you learn from them. I started paying people to do things. Like I hired Fiverr, and I'm like, okay, that didn't give me what I wanted, And then I did find somebody that's to do social media, and she was phenomenal. But I could not, because I wasn't bringing a return on investment. I couldn't, I could not, afford, so
Hmm.
that's the road. So then I had to learn on my own, even the website. And yeah, so the more I put out, it started coming to me and people liked it. It did really well. I had a bunch of reviews. I was just in awe, that that's when I say you're doing, because that's what you're supposed to do.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it worked out.
Well, that's great that you found all those resources. I used to work in self-publishing, and so Zulon was one of the competitors. So I'm very familiar with Zulon,
Oh.
and those types of services are great. I mean, they're great for, there's all different routes to go
Mhm.
to publish your book, right? You can go through a traditional publisher, you can find a hybrid publisher, you can find a self-publishing company. So it's great that you found one that worked for you, and you were able to kind of piece things together. It sounds like you were kind of um flailing a little bit, figuring it all out yourself, and
Yeah,
but
that's right. That's
but
right.
yeah, you did a great job, and
Yeah.
yeah, you were very
Yeah.
successful with that book. So I love that you were able to come on and share that with us. I will link to your book in the show notes, and I also would love to link to anything else that you think would be helpful. So how can listeners find you online and learn more about what you're doing?
Sure. They can go to CassandraCrawley.com. That's my website. And I'm on all social media platforms. I just heard there was a new one out there called Sky or Blue or something. I don't know what.
Don't know that one.
I just do the LinkedIn and the Facebook. And I do a little TikTok. I don't dance or any of that kind of stuff. Um, and then another way is my not only my website, you can get the book from the website. I also have a companion journal that will go with the book. That's not on the website, but that's not on Amazon or any of those, but it's on my website. And it actually, because what has happened with me, I've been on a self-discovery journey. And I've been on that seem like all my life. And so that workbook, that companion manual will help individuals have that journey and kind of understand where they are. And Instagram is the other one that I'm on, and of course, LinkedIn. Yeah, so
Great.
that's how you can
Great.
find me.
Well, I will definitely connect with you on TikTok. I'm a big fan of TikTok for authors. So I think it is a great resource for authors to find readers. Even
Oh,
if you're not dancing, that's okay. But
uh-huh.
yeah, I will connect with you there. So well, I will link it share those links in the show notes for people. And yeah, so thank you so much, Cassandra, for coming on and sharing your book and your journey with us.
Yeah, and thanks so much for having me, Kelly. I've enjoyed this.
For a community of women writers to support and inspire you on your journey, join the Author Power Circle. Connect weekly with fellow authors, stay accountable, and move your book forward in an encouraging community. Learn more at kellyshuckneck.com